every morning with drive. Being on the grind, know I had to survive. We had to win. Started from the dirt and the rubble. I had to be the needle that was popping your bubble.
Hello and welcome into the Rookie Prospect Profile Series, folks. This is a Zilla Fantasy Elite production. Today we are excited to be looking at tight end Brock Bowers within the tight end machine learning models. We all know that Brock Bowers is one of the best tight end prospects to come out in the last 10 years. Just how good can Brock Bowers be? Our machine learning models hold the answers, and stay tuned for the verdict. Brock Bowers was drafted number 13 overall by the Las Vegas Raiders. They come into the league out of Georgia University. Brock Bowers comes in at a height of 6'3", 243 pounds, and that's really all we got from him. He didn't do any athletic testing during the lead up to the NFL draft. 6'3", 243 pounds, not exactly a great big tight end there, but we know he's supposed to be super athletic, should be fairly fast there. His college dominator rating was 27.2, college target share was 22.4, 9.75 inch hand size, and then his arm length 32.75, decent there, 18.7 breakout age. That's kind of what we're working with within the model here, along with some of the metrics from Fantasy Life's tight end supermodel. So we got the program index, the career adjusted yards per team pass attempt, and the career targeted quarterback rating. Outside of that, nothing else really went into the models, and I think that kind of hurt him a little bit in terms of his projections here, but they're not all that bad. So let's take a deep dive into those numbers, starting with the first year. And we see here Brock Bowers, year one, 8.38 to 8.46 median outcome, and average outcome there. Rank 1 across the board in everything except for standard deviation, which is the 10th best there. That CV at 17.2. I think that was his worst one out of all 4 years, and really, that's really good. He actually has the best CVs amongst the wide receiver and tight end classes here, so the models are the most confident in Brock Bowers reaching these particular outcomes or having these particular set of success metrics, I guess. Let's go look at historical comps. Who was sitting at the about 8 to 9 range there in terms of their rookie season? Well, this would be roughly a top 15 tight end season of all time. And I do mean of all time in terms of the last 11 draft classes. There's a little over 200 tight ends in the last 11 draft classes who recorded some fantasy points in their rookie season. This particular 8.5 range would be top 15 in the last 11 draft classes. People in that particular range in their rookie season: Will Tye, Ian Thomas, Chris Herndon, Chris Gregg, Greg Dulcich, and Will Dissly, all in between 8 to 8.9 fantasy points there. It's pretty good there. Actually, 9th overall is Dalton Kincaid at 9.39, so that's kind of the range you can think of in year one. Model is saying, hey, he should be pretty good. And he does reach a maximum output of 12.49, which would be the 3rd best of all time. So just kind of getting into the top 5 seasons here, we have Sam Laporta last year at 14.08, Jordan Reed at 12.7 in his rookie season, Evan Ingram when he was with the Giants hit 11.6, Caden Smith 10.8, kind of a nobody there, but he did it on about 3 touchdowns and 250 yards in his rookie season. And then Kyle Pitts at 10.39 when he hit 1,000 yards, only scored 1 touchdown in his rookie year, was at 10.39. So that's kind of the rough range of outcomes. Again, those are all top 5 tight end seasons in the last 11 overall draft classes. And pretty confident that these values are good with a 17.2 CV. So how much is Brock Bowers going to improve going into year 2? Let's take a peek at that. And we see he jumps up almost into the 10 fantasy points per game range. Again, we see all of these rankings. Number 1 overall at 12.0% CV was actually, I think, 11.95. So almost in the 11% CV range, which is really good. It is very confident in these particular values and hitting almost double digits here in his 2nd season in terms of fantasy points per game. And just looking at it, we see the 25th percentile even at 9.18, pretty solid there. Really condensed fantasy points per game here from 9 to 13, essentially from 25th to maximum output here. So pretty confident it's going to hit in this particular range. Who is hovering in between that 9.5 to 10 range, or even up into the 13. There are probably not a ton of tight ends who were doing that. We have about 6 tight ends here, all inside roughly the top 15. David Njoku and Dallas Goedert in their second season hit 9.6. Crockett Gilmore, if you remember him, 9.8. Richard Rodgers, 9.9. Noah Fant, 9.95 in his second season. And then the next best is Jake Ferguson last year at 10.42. So that's getting into top 11 territory there. That's the median range of outcome you can kind of expect from him in year 2. That maximum range of 13.22 would be the third best ever. Best ever second year in the last 11 draft classes was George Kittle at 16 fantasy points per game. Mark Andrews, 13.8. Will Dissly hit 12.3, but I believe that was in a limited action season. OJ Howard, fourth best at 12.1. Travis Kelce in his second season, which was really his first year in the NFL, but he spent the whole rookie season on the injured reserve, was at 11.4. We see Evan Ingram again at 11.3 with Austin Seferian-Jenkins also at 11.3. So those kind of round out the top 7 or so tight end seasons in the last 11 draft classes. So really close to that. If you look at those graphs down there, everything hovering in between basically 9 and about 10, 12 fantasy points per game, which is a pretty solid year for most tight ends. Will we see Brock Bowers continue to fly off the charts into double-digit territory here? What kind of year 3 and year 4 are we going to see from Brock Bowers according to the model? And we actually see kind of stays pat here going into year 3. See a pretty decent jump up in year 2 and then kind of maintains that into year 3. However, we do see these rankings, the best minimum and 10th percentile, but then he's second across the board for the rest of them in between the 25th and maximum output. CV at 14.9. Very confident he's going to hit that result. The interesting thing, though, if you do look at his graph, the highest bucket in terms of density hitting into his 75th percentile rank, which is 10.5. If you look at the other one that's split out into the number of predictions, his highest one's hovering right around the median there at 9.76. So expecting him to hit in between 10, 9.5, 10.5 fantasy points per game. A lot of predictions going into that particular area, very condensed in that area. So who hit that in their third season? Let's go look. We actually only have 120 tight ends in the model for their third season. And the last 11 draft classes getting into that particular range. We're looking closely at the top 20 roughly in the last 11 draft seasons. Sitting at 8.9, CJ Fedorowicz and Jace Amaro. Not real good guys there. Dalton Schultz, 9.16. Hayden Hurst, 9.32. Jacob Hollister, 9.4. Noah Fant, again, 9.94. Austin Hooper, 10.1. Dallas Goedert, 10.58. So we've seen Noah Fant and Dallas Goedert a few times here in the second and third season. So really in that ilk. Again, he didn't do any athletic testing. I think had he done that, he'd probably have a little bit better numbers here. But how the machine learning models handle that, it says, hey, if you didn't do any testing in here, we're going to look at your closest 10 comparables and see what their particular input was at that range and average them out. So let's say he didn't do any 40-yard dash. It looks at his most closest comparables and it says, hey, they averaged about 4.68 in the 40-yard dash. That's what it's going to put in for him essentially as it goes through. It's going to take an average of the closest comparables for him in the model and use that for any blanks in his thing. And I said he didn't do hardly any athletic testing. We just have some height and weight numbers and then those college stats. So I think that's hurting him a little bit in this model. Keep that in mind. Looking at the high end here, we do see a 14.86, which would be a very tremendous season from any tight end. Hitting 15 fantasy points per game, it's pretty rare, especially in the first 4 seasons. We're getting into the top 5 here, so I'm just going to list off the top 5 players. Jordan Reed, George Kittle, Tyler Eifert in his third season, Evan Ingram yet again, and Mark Andrews. So those guys in that order: 17.4, which was Jordan Reed, 15.9, George Kittle, 14.7, Tyler Eifert, Evan Ingram, 13.7, and Mark Andrews, 12.15. So you're looking in that range. If Brock Bowers hits a ceiling, kind of a weird situation there with Vegas Raiders drafting him and taking Michael Mayer, who was a pretty solid tight end prospect, produced all 3 seasons. kind of a baby Gronk type, and then they take Bowers here. So we'll see how that shakes out, but kind of looking like Brock Bowers should right at that double-digit range, which is going to give you a top 15, top 20 in the last 11 draft classes type of season, almost guaranteed. So let's go into year 4, see what happens for Brock Bowers here. And actually, we see him take a little step down here in the mean and median at 9.19 and 9.18. And again, I explained part of this could be due to the fact that he didn't do any athletic testing, and it's kind of dinging him for that. We can go look at those particular numbers in a little bit. The maximum output at 15.96, almost 16 fantasy points per game, is really good. CV still below 20, so it's very confident in these particular results. That is the best one in the class. So in year 4, we only have 99 total tight ends in the last 11 draft classes. Obviously, we have some that haven't hit that range yet. But hovering in that median mean outcome, we have Evan Ingram yet again at 8.81 in his 4th season. Cameron Brate, 8.9. Dawson Knox, 9.05. Jack Doyle, 9.1. Jonnu Smith, 9.35. OJ Howard, 9.4. And Mike Gesicki, 9.71. Getting into the range of, hey, not a bad guy to have on your fantasy squad. You're starting him week in and week out, and he's providing you tight end 6 to tight end 10 fantasy points per game in that particular season. So that's his median range of outcome. What if he hits a ceiling at 15.96? That'd actually be the second best ever for any year 4 tight end. Mark Andrews was the best at 17.71. George Kittle at 15.64 during his 4th season. Then we saw Austin Hooper blast off in his 4th season at 14.6. Jordan Reed again, 14. Travis Kelce, 13.8. Zach Ertz, 13.1. So that's the range that you're going to look at. Again, those are like the top year 4 scores of all time, or at least the last 11 draft classes, the top 6 tight end seasons there in year 4. So putting Brock Bowers highly up there, I guess second best ever in terms of the maximum ceiling, but we do see he's faltering a little bit in those rankings in year 4 too. Number 1, 10th percentile, but then he's number 2 across the board and everything else except for the 90th percentile, which we see he's actually 3rd in the class in terms of his 90th percentile outcome. So we do have some interesting tight end prospects coming up, seeing these year 4 numbers anyway. All right, that's going to do it for today's rookie prospect profile on Brock Bowers. Hopefully this gives you a little bit more confidence in terms of making decisions and what to expect from Brock Bowers. Is this guy a generational talent? Is he going to disappoint like Kyle Pitts? Who knows? But the models do seem to like him roughly hitting that 10 fantasy points per game after his rookie season, where maybe it's a little bit subdued in the 8 range. So we'll see how he does. This has been presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. Thanks for tuning in.